up. Time to rock. Hey, how's it going, everybody? Always a pleasure seeing everyone.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning and good afternoon from over here in Aussie land.
Good night from New York.
Good night.
Yeah.
Oh, don't you love it?
How are we doing, guys? We had good weeks.
Yeah.
Busy week. Busy couple of weeks, actually. Busy
You've
couple
been working
of weeks.
14 hours.
12 and 14 hour days, yeah.
Wow.
Right. Well done. Well done.
And my first gig last weekend, which was
fantastic.
I'm not used to it. It's knocked me around. It's actually I'm not gig. What do they call it? I'm not match ready. I'm not gig ready. You know. I just
Here we go.
I'm exhausted all week from it.
Gig fit.
Yeah,
Gig fit. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
It's not gig fit yet, so it's going to take a couple of gigs to get gig fit. I tell you. Anyway.
Awesome. Well, it's my pleasure, guys, to introduce the co-hosts here and our special guest for the Sunday show. You have myself all the way from Hamilton, New Zealand. On the bottom there, you have Brad from Australia, Melbourne. You have Simon from somewhere around Bristol, somewhere
In the wilds.
in the hills. And on the top level with me, you have again Micheal, who was a guest on the show a couple of weeks ago. So it's our privilege and our pleasure to have Micheal join us for what I think is going to be an interesting show, and it should be it should be good. So if you guys hang in tight, at the 2-hour mark, we'll see where we're going to be, guys. So everyone's in, if you're in the chat, hold on. Simon's going to go through and say g'day. We love you all. Please subscribe to the channel. I'll put some links to Michael's channel and also to Brad's channel. So subscribe, please. You'll find these guys on Instagram and social media. They would really appreciate your support, and subscribe to our channel. Brad's challenge of 500 by the end of March. It's only about 40. We only need about 40, brother.
Yeah, 40. So everyone that's on here watching this now or at a later date, whenever you're watching this, make sure you damn well subscribe.
We're on 468, so 32.
Oh, 32. Oh, awesome.
32.
Awesome.
32 to go.
That's awesome. Shall
I say
Simon,
hello
do you want to do a quick shout out?
Quick shout out. Morning, Nelson Rodriguez is always here. Thanks, Nelson. Amy, trying to keep my eyes open. Well, we can send you off to Slumberland, Amy. No props. D-Tube. Morning, D-Tube. How you doing? And what's up, Doc, as well. Good morning, all. And thanks for joining. Hope you enjoy the show.
Awesome. Now, on the screen there, you'll see Brad's Instagram account. Follow him there. Brad will take you to the beaches. Brad will take you to gigs.
Basically show you what you're missing.
Yeah.
It's like that's the only free time I get is what you see on Instagram. That's it.
And there's Micheal there. Micheal will take you anywhere you want to go in New York City when he's allowed to, because you guys are still sort of confined there, aren't you?
Right. Yes, very much so. We have a couple of outdoor restaurants or tents, and some indoor dining, limited capacity. So we're waiting to get vaccinated until we can go back and eat indoors and all that stuff.
Awesome.
Well, I've had my first one, Micheal, so I'm happy. Yeah. Feel much more protected. Yes, we're not due to open up till about was it the 9th of April, I think. Pubs are allowed to open again for pub garden-y type stuff. So everyone's looking forward to that.
Me too.
Yeah. Well, me less so, but I don't go to the pub very much, but looking forward to that.
Awesome. So I suppose what we should do, guys, we should kick the show off. If you guys have paid attention to the link, or if you're just joining us because you've got nothing else to do, that T-shirt that Brad's wearing, you know, might give a clue of the album that we're going to discuss. There it is.
I'm wearing Apollo. I'm wearing a NASA Apollo shirt and stuff. Just close. No cigar though.
Yeah. Awesome.
I got one of those as well. I got the album in the cupboard.
Yeah. Simon's got the CD. Look, guys, I suppose that this album that we're going to discuss, and you know, we're going to kick it off with Michael doing the intro. For me, this album, for a long, long time, I was a young guy, was beyond me. It was a growing up album. It was an album that I couldn't understand, and I've mentioned that before, guys, when we've gone through and ranked some of these albums. You know, there's a stage, I think, in your development and your experience where you graduate from a type of music to another type of music. And on my first couple of hearings of this album, I didn't understand it. I'm willing to admit that. I probably didn't make a connection till I was about 16 or 17 with some friends. And talking about the album while we were listening to it kind of helped. So, I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say about the album. It's an album that deserves its own category. I did some research on the album over the last week, watched a couple of documentaries. Again, top marks to Pink Floyd. They have a lot of information on YouTube. They're not blockers, so there's a lot of documentaries out there. So any band that does that deserves mention. Deep Purple do it, so we discussed that, didn't we, guys, a couple of weeks ago? So there's a lot of good information out there, and hopefully our show's going to add to that content. So, Michael, run through quickly what you think this album means, and then Simon and Brad, and then we'll get into the album.
If you really want to get into it, you can read Nick Mason's biography, which is excellent.
I think the album is basically a representation of everything that happens in life. They take you through different themes, different phases, if you will. And you can just go even by the song titles. Breathe is birth. Time is time as time passes. I'm just going to skip to money and all the work and labor that you put into your life. Us and Them, I believe, is related to war. I'm not completely sure, but Any Color You Like, I'm not completely sure what that one's about. Seems like a British type thing, especially in the spelling of it. And then you've got
spelling.
Right. And then you've got Brain Damage and Eclipse, which is about madness, which I think Roger Waters tied into Syd Barrett, who was at that time descending into his personal madness from all the drug use that he had done in the 60s. So we should definitely mention that Pink Floyd was transitioning at this time, and they had just come from metal, where they had a couple of more conceptual songs, like Echoes. And a song like Echoes has a couple of different sections and movements, if you will. And that kind of set Pink Floyd up to write more complex pieces, things that transitioned into each other and flowed. And I think that they may have taken a note from the Beatles on Abbey Road, especially the second side where they have the Abbey Road medley, in terms of songs transitioning into each other musically as one seamless song. And I definitely think that they took that when they were arranging and producing Dark Side. So from a fact standpoint, I know that Dark Side came out on March 1st, 1973. And it took them, I think, a couple of months to record it at Abbey Road Studios, also called EMI, in London. And their producer, engineer, was Alan Parsons, who later formed the Alan Parsons Project. And Alan had also done some work on Paul McCartney's records. And I think he mixed Maybe I'm Amazed, the studio. So he was already an established producer and engineer. And I think Pink Floyd was in maybe Studio 2. Not necessarily, not the same studio that the Beatles were in with the big staircase. So there were a couple of studios or a couple of different rooms at Abbey Road, and I think Pink Floyd was in the one that the Beatles weren't in. And the other thing I know is that the album was on the charts, on the Billboard charts, for about 14 years. So I think that says something about the longevity of the album and how good it actually is. And it spans generations, and parents will listen to it, and their kids will eventually gravitate to it. And I think that's what happened with me.
All right. Did your parents own it, Michael? Did they have it first? And
Yes, they have. I think an album of it, but we had some water damage in the basement, and my dad's original copy got all water damaged, and he threw it out. And I said, no. So now we're rebuying all that vinyl, like King Crimson's In the Court of the Crimson King, and
an observation by King Crimson.
That's worth.
full unabridged title.
Right.
Simon, so we know that you used to waste a lot of evenings.
I've said this before.
On the on the roof of your parents' house with your headphones. You just want to mention, Do you want to talk to us about how you discovered the album?
Yeah, well, I was nearly 15 in 1973, so this is one of the first albums I bought. As we all know, the first album I bought was Jethro Tull's Aqualung, which is weird but true. But I was 15. We're going to school with my mates. We're all into rock music, so we're buying Machine Head, and we're buying Made in Japan, and we're buying Jethro Tull, and we're listening to King Crimson, and we're and Dark Side of the Moon comes out, and so we buy it because Pink Floyd are right up our street, in the field that we're inhabiting in terms of music, and so bought it when it came out, pretty much, with the posters, with the pyramids and the other weirder things, the squares on it and stuff. Sadly, stuck them to my bedroom door when I was 14, so they're not still there in my mum and dad's house. But yeah, Michael, what Andrew was referring to is I used to have a room. My parents live in a 5-story house, and it sounds posher than it is, but the top floor. I had a room on the top floor, and it had a parapet outside, basically a guttering with a wall, and I used to lie out on the wall in the night, and with Dark Side of the Moon on my stereo, turn up and watch the stars and kind of just take it in like that, because in the days pre-smoking dope, it's the Camberwell carrot, as it's known as. It just lay out on the thing and kind of chilled out to it, and it's one of those records where you can do that all the way. You have to get back in via the window and turn it over, but it was always a favorite, always one of my go-to records from this time. As I say, it takes me back to my being 14 and a half, nearly 15, and that special time in one's life when you're really connecting with music, really getting into it and developing your own tastes. I mean, my old dad had tastes which are awesome, which we'll get to, but
Brad, tell us about your discovery of this album, please.
Yeah, well, for me, Dark Side of the Moon, like Pink Floyd in particular, I'm going to mirror what you said, Andrew. I was never really, from a younger age, I never really understood or could grasp, like I did with Led Zeppelin and Jimi Hendrix and Deep Purple and all those bands. Pink Floyd seemed a little bit left of that. They weren't quite where I was at. And I firmly believe, this record in particular, but Pink Floyd music is like blues music to me, you've got to have life experience and to understand the music and understand the concept behind, especially with this record, because it is about life, and which we'll get into when we get into more of the songs, obviously. But it was, I reckon, maybe 15 years ago I got into Pink Floyd, but before then I just couldn't really get. I mean, I loved the music, I loved what I was hearing, but I couldn't listen to a whole record of Pink Floyd without wanting to throw on a Led Zeppelin record or something like that, you know. But obviously down the track, for me, like Pink Floyd, you know, once I started to understand, you know, love, loss, this, that, death experience, people dying in my life and all sorts of things, and then understanding, you know, the concept of living in the moment, I guess. So, yeah, time flies past so quickly. And if we don't live in the moment, this record, we'll get into it more when we get into it, I guess, but it kind of makes you have a better understanding and a grasp on life. Before I had all that experience, it's like for me watching a young blues musician. It's great that they can do what they're doing and they're playing great or whatever, but they haven't really got life experience to give that feel behind it. So generally, blues musicians, when they get to their 30s and 40s, become real blues musicians because they got life experience. That's kind of what happened with this music for me. It took a bit for me to understand it because I hadn't had that experience yet. So, but
awesome.
Obviously, you know, brilliant music.
Oh, absolutely. There's a couple of songs there that, you know, we can't give it away now. But yeah. I agree with you. Want to do a special shout out to a very good friend of the channel, Warren, who gave us another donation to the channel. Warren, thank you. We accept the donation with thanks. We appreciate that, and we also hope that you are getting well in your treatment, and the co-hosts always keep you in mind. So hold on.
There's your guitar.
You got
You want your guitar back?
Yeah, that's it. Is that it?
That's it.
That's the one.
Even got the same pickups, the whole bit. Oh, mate.
And the signature. How'd you do that?
It doesn't have the lace sensors.
Got the noises fun.
Send it back.
Send it back. Good. Well, you say good morning to Aaron Lally as well. Good morning, Aaron. Thanks for joining.
Thank you,
Cool
Aaron.
to see. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So I think what we've done, guys, is we've given a good background personally to the album. I'm going to hand it over to Michael, our special guest, and he's going to talk about the first song, Simon, Brad, and myself, and we'll rank it, and we'll offer some opinions and some insights onto the tracks as per usual. So, Michael.
Are the rankings out of 10?
They are.
Oh, well, yeah, they're out of 10. Yeah, they're always out of 10. Well, you know... Well, you can go 20 out of 10.
Brad's score, which is 20 out of 10, which is...
There's definitely one song on here that's a 20 out of 10, and we'll get to that.
Only one?
Awesome. Only one?
Okay, so the first song is Speak to Me, which is a kind of instrumental track, and I think it was credited to Nick Mason. So he's getting some royalty checks for that song, which is, like I said, a bunch of sound effects. And then there's a couple of speaking voices. And speaking voices is a theme that recurs on the album a lot. Roger Waters asked a bunch of people in the studio a bunch of questions. He put them on like cue cards, and he sat them down with a microphone and asked them these questions and looked for honest answers. And they took these recorded answers and kind of just interspersed them throughout the album on many songs. And we'll mention it as we go through the album. So there's comments like, I'm not frightened of dying, or I've been mad for effing years, things like that. So the song Speak to Me starts off with this heartbeat, which is actually a kick drum symbolizing a heartbeat. And that kick drum symbolizing a heartbeat symbolizes the beginning of life, so birth. That's what I perceive with that song. And when you see Roger Waters or David Gilmour in concert and they start with that song, you get so excited because it just moves you, especially that low end of the kick drum. It's just so exciting, and it gets clearer as it progresses. So it eventually climaxes into this either Claire Torrey or other female vocalist screaming, and that transitions into Breathe. And it's just a very exciting, different intro with all these mechanical sounds, including the heartbeats. So if I were to rate this song, I would give it an 8 because it's exciting. It has a lot of different themes in it. It doesn't have any really melody, and that's why I'm giving it an 8.
Cool.
Yeah.
Simon.
I think yes, I agree with the hobby. I think the clocks thing came from Alan Parsons didn't he, a quadraphonic recording of for something else, and they decided to use some of it on here. So it's not specifically done for here. They just thought they'd do it. I think it's that thing. Clocks ticking time is one of the great themes on here, and also the massive of manic laughter as well. It's kind of portend of one of the themes as well. And, so yeah, I mean it's you can't skip it, definitely not, because it's the intro to the album and it sets the mood for the whole thing. And that's right. Well, I should say, Michael, you remind me. One of the people Roger Waters put these cards out and then on a table. Someone got various people to do it, including Paul and Linda McCartney. They did it, but apparently their answers were deemed to be they were trying too hard to be funny, so they were not authentic enough. So they weren't included. None of their answers were included, and they went with the doorman of Abbey Road, Jerry O'Driscoll, and various other people.
Hi, Ivan.
Good morning, Ivan. And so I too am giving it an 8 because I think it portends the album excellently, and gives it that. And I should say that the helicopter type noise at the end is I think it's made on a VCS3 on a synthesizer.
Awesome.
Which is
well, for me, we talk about this nearly in every episode that the album journey. It's the start of the album. It's introducing us to what's to come, and the concept. They set out to do a concept record, basically based around life, death, and everything in between. So, Speak to Me. I mean, it's got little snippets. Also, there are the talking parts, but there's snippets of the helicopter noise, the cash register noise, which is in Money. Like there's snippets of those things that reoccur in there. It's like an introduction. Bam, this is what we are. But it's also an introduction, in my opinion, it's an interlude into the first song, which the first song to me is Breathe in the Air. So I might give away my rating to Breathe in the Air here. So I'm going to give it 10 out of 10 because the way that it's you can't listen to Breathe in the Air without Speak to Me before it.
Well, there's a couple of songs like that on the last two songs. Yeah.
And that's the theme of the record, and that's going to be a recurring thing for me is the way I'm rating some of these things because I see them as maybe one song, two parts, but one song. And look, it's the build-up interlude into Breathe in the Air. It's an amazing, innovating sonic exploration for its time too. Let's be honest. 10 out of 10.
Okay, well, we'll come back and talk about Breathe, obviously. So so Speak to Me, apparently, for a lot of my friends, was the beginning of the freak out, on the album, because this album in particular for a long time in my environment meant that you were a participant of other things, recreational Yeah. So it was the beginning of the freak out, and and rightly so, because it is pretty weird. And I think you guys are right. It's setting you on a journey. It's a concept album. You can't skip it because it is weird. It's wonderful in that weirdness, isn't it? It's just, yeah. So I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 too. But I dig where Brad's going because that makes sense. So, 8 out of 10. Michael, the next song.
Breathe in the Air. This is one of my favorite tracks on the album. It's also one of the most complex. I mean, it goes from 2 chords, an E minor of sorts and an A major 7th or A 7th, and just the 2 chords against each other sound so good, and they play it at this tempo that's just, it breathes. And the sound of the drums, the sound of the ride cymbal and the snare drum is just so incredible. It's just one of the best drum recordings I've ever heard.
Wow.
And just the pace of the song is just fantastic. And David Gilmour is using a couple of different guitars and a couple of different sounds on this song. So he's using a pedal steel guitar with a slide, and he's got a delay pedal on that sound, and it just sounds fantastic. And he's setting up the song with this slide part. And he also has a Stratocaster, his Black Strat, which sold for 4.3 million or whatever it sold for. He's got his famous Black Strat going through a Univibe pedal, which is a kind of Leslie speaker simulator pedal. And the sound of that is panned into one ear, and the sound of the lap steel guitar is panned into another ear. So you have all of these dimensions happening and these parts kind of layering together. So a lot is happening. And then after the 2 chords go on for about a minute, there's a couple of different chord changes that almost sound like jazz chords. And there's a Classic Albums documentary on YouTube, and you can buy it on Amazon, I'm sure, where Rick Wright, the keyboardist, says that he took one of the chords from Kind of Blue, Miles Davis.
Yeah.
He wanted to do a chord change from G major to E minor. And the typical way of doing that is going from a G major to a B major and then landing on E minor, which is what he didn't want to do. So he actually took this chord from Miles Davis's Kind of Blue record that was the perfect chord and also a nod to Miles Davis, and it led them back into this E minor chord, and it was just harmonically different and interesting that they added these jazz chords to a otherwise 2-chord song.
Wow.
So, and the other thing I want to mention is that David Gilmour did the vocals, and he doubled himself, and he harmonized with himself very well. So that's a kind of hard thing to do, and sometimes you don't have the voice to do both parts. But I think David did both for Breathe.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's just one of my favorite songs on the album. 10 out of 10.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I mean, yes, I think that, and also I'll point out, like I do often, is that in 1973 you had to go and sing it live. You know, it's not auto-tuned, it's not fiddled with. You know, you went in the studio and you sang it to yourself, a harmony, and that's really hard. You know, to do it that well, speaks volumes of him as and I think he's not necessarily picked out as a great singer, but I think he is a great singer, David Gilmour. You know, he sings, and his guitar playing is, for me, that's where his emotion comes out. You know, he's quite a British guy, quite reserved, quite, quietly spoken, but that the passion in the feel that he has in his playing, I think is astonishing, really. So I'm since a fan of, massive fan of David Gilmour and his playing and the way that he does things. And I know he kind of operates in a very kind of pentatonic thing, but it doesn't sound like blues very often. I know it's brutal, but it sounds like him. He managed to take in that blues kind of thing and make his own slant on it. And I think that's I think it's one of the greatest compliments you can give anybody, really. You play three notes and it's them. And if you could do that on a guitar, hats off to you, because I think that's seriously impressive. And I think you could say that about David Gilmour as a thing. Yes, I remember lying out on my parapet, and looking up at the stars as Nelson was it Nelson? Was it Nelson? He was saying that in some island or something. What was he doing? Oh, here we are. D2 was in Western Pacific. I absolutely, breathe in the air, and you're lying on the parapet watching the stars. Breathing is the perfect thing, and kind of to bring on that, to take me back to that place, and that lying out, and not, thinking about breathing and stuff, and looking up at the sky, and that thing about the Tom Petty thing. The future is wide open. When you're 15, that is the future, and it's wide open. And this is about what you'll be doing, what you'll smiles you'll give and tears you'll cry. Things for the future that you'll be doing. It's and then he does the Run Rabbit Run bit, which always sends a tingle down my spine. When they come into that Run Rabbit Run, I don't know. You get that real feeling that of something that has some substance to it. I think, for me, it has a substance, has a story to tell, and an idea, and a view. And I think that view of life being Run Rabbit Run is. I'm sure we've all felt that. The rat race and all of that. And for me, that was a thing. It was something to come, really. Yes, Warren. You see, I didn't partake in the smoker. It's a bit early for me, but it's certainly that. So I give this a 10, as it's part of my 15-year-old self, and one of the greats. I think it's beautifully, as you say, Michael, beautifully recorded, beautifully done. The parts, and it has that kind of soaring quality. Great solo from David Gilmour. Love that. Love it all. And that the lap steel and the thing is just brilliant. So I'm giving it a 20 out of 10. Brad scores.
Oh, you're starting the 20 out of 10s.
Yeah. Why not? Start as you mean to go on.
Brad.
That's a 10. Brad's on mute. You're on mute, Brad.
It's probably a good thing I was on mute.
Not at all.
No one wants to hear what I've got to say.
Hey.
You already gave his answer in the last song, so we know what his answer is for this one.
Yeah. Do it again. Go around
again.
Okay,
so the build up from Speak to Me into Breathe in the Air, it's like a breath of fresh air, sort of transitions to that. Beautiful chord progression. There's so much space between the notes. The univibe, that's univibe pedals when they're used the way Gilmour did, and like Hendrix and that. They always remind me of this. I picture music in colors and textures and things, and I always picture univibes like honey dripping slowly, warm honey dripping. It's kind of got that sort of texture to it. It's beautiful, the univibe use on this song. There's a really beautiful amount of echo in this as well. I love the harmonies and the double track vocals by Gilmour. The lap steel guitar just adds like a really wonderful spacey feel. It's that Duo 1000 double neck thing that he had. So look, you guys know what I've already scored it, 10 out of 10. And it's never a skip.
Look, I agree with you guys, and thank you, Michael, for the chord introduction to the song. Appreciate that in-depth research that you're offering is appreciated, and there's a couple of people already making comments about that in the chat, so thank you. Simon and Brad, look, I agree with you guys. I'm just going to mention I loved the steel guitar. You know, the lap steel guitar was just something when I first heard it, and right through the whole album, you know, that part of the song just resonates with me. And it's just, again, you've mentioned it, Brad, the space that's in the song. It's a wonderful example of how a song can give you a great sense of space. And Simon, you hit that on the head too by saying, you know, the engineering. It's the way it's engineered and mixed, and you know that's not easy to do in 1972. But you know these guys did it, and look, it's a 10 out of 10 for me. It's never a skip. I love the song.
Do you think, Michael? One of the things we talk about here, my theories is that records now are recorded and mixed visually. Because you can see them, you can see the tracks on a monitor, on a computer monitor. Right. That you record and mix with your eyes. So you say, "Oh, look, there's a gap there," yeah. You know. Whereas then you had no eyes; all you had was your ears to listen to. You know, and when it was, you know, recorded it, and that kind of, I feel that sense of space. It will be different now because you will be able to see the tracks, and you'll be thinking, "Oh, I'll just put some extra things in there and do that." When actually, that thing about having that space is what makes it so beautiful, you know. And that difference, you know, of having to. And I know they sort of went over to the 5.1 surround sound version because they used to take a 5.1 surround sound PA on tour with them.
Right.
This is astonishing to have, you know, in a hall you'd set up the four corners, and you can imagine that being an experience of a, you know, tremendous experience.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy. And also too, don't be scared, guys, to put your rankings for the songs in the chat too. You know, we'll acknowledge them as we go through the through our tracks. So you know, if you disagree with us, you know, feel free to have a crack. Michael, the next song.
Before we go to the next song, there was one last comment I wanted to say on Breathe.
No
Simon mentioned Run, Rabbit, Run. After Gilmour sings Run, Rabbit, Run, Rick Wright does this like organ gliss. It's kind of when you just like move your hands up the keyboard or whatever you're playing. And it just sounds so great after Gilmour sings Run, Rabbit, Run. So listen out for that organ kind of feature. And that's something also that this album is so good at. Just the complements between the vocals. So what is being played after a vocal is sung? So we call them comps for short. So either it can be done by anything. It can be done by a drum, guitar, bass, keyboard, whatever.
Wow.
So that's just called comping. It's the space after a vocal is sung. It could be a drum fill or anything. So it's just perfectly chosen in every song. So the Run, Rabbit, Run line, there's that organ thing. And you also mentioned the spaciness. This song also kind of sets it up for space rock, this album.
Yeah.
Because the slide guitar kind of reminds the listener of previous songs like David Bowie's Space Oddity, which has the slide guitar, which makes you think of space. So slide guitar with all that echo makes you think of, you know, going into space. Or even Elton John's Rocket Man, which also has that slide guitar with a lot of reverb. So that's why people associate, I think, this album with space rock.
Well, yes, and Moon, of course, as the people who've just gone to the moon. Well, yeah, just to be really obvious, but I mean that thing about, I mean, Michael, I'm old enough to, you know, I remember the moon landings. I remember watching it on telly and stuff, you know, and the kind of that global excitement that those things engendered, you know, in that excitement about technology, space, you know. Find the frontier. Sorry, but going out into space and exploration and doing that was right right in the forefront of people's thinking. So I can see that, that's why lots of people were engaged with that on some levels, which I think this is on some levels is about.
Yeah, thank you for that added comment and point, Michael. We appreciate that. That's the reason why we do these shows on the run, and that's not related to Brad at any.
On the run to the beach.
Because I'm always on the run.
Always on the run. So On the Run, to my knowledge, is about travel, and I think Roger Waters' fear of flying. But little did they know that this album would cause a lot of touring for them and a lot of money for them. So I guess they had to get used to the idea of flying. But so they recorded this song using, and Simon can go into more detail about this, a certain synthesizer. If Simon wants to chime in.
Yeah. Called a VCS3, which I have here's on my mug that I tend to use these things. There's a picture of it. More appositely, Michael, you won't know this, but the others will. I'll just show this. This picture. Sorry, it's not a great picture, but this picture you can see the VCS3 there. That's my dad.
Oh, wow.
Michael. My dad was a composer and got really interested in electronic music in the early 70s and had some of these from the early 70s, VCS3s. So he's using them contemporaneously with Pink Floyd. Later on, he actually, in the 90s, he actually owned EMS, the company that makes it. And it's still going, EMS. There's a guy, he gave it to a guy called Robin Wood, who runs it still from a barn in Cornwall. But so I have a very personal connection to the VCS. I've used it a lot, mucked about on it a lot. It's an extraordinary instrument. And I'm just, my dad did this. He did all the music for this. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It was the first big natural history series, I think, probably in the world, 78. Sort of like 10-part series, Life on Earth, and David Attenborough. That's the first big David Attenborough thing, and the first. My dad did all music for that, and he used the VCS3 a lot. He would go and record, musicians, like flutes and violins and whatever, and then he would take them back to his studio and mess with them by putting them through the VCS3 and tape loops, proper tape loops, actual tapes, and mess around with them. So a lot of those sounds on there are that taking conventional instruments and mucking about with them with the VCS3, amongst other EMS things as well, like vocoders and various other things. So I have personal connection to the VCS3. It's an astonishing instrument, and that's what it was designed and built for. For those things, really, in that great synthesizer age, with Moog and coming into the market.
So Amy's saying, "Wow, Simon." So yeah, thank you for the background to the instrument. So, Michael, do you want to?
Yeah, I'll rate it, and there's I have a fact or two more about it.
Cool.
So Pink Floyd would play On the Run kind of as an instrumental jam. So I think Gilmour would just be playing these like bluesy guitar licks in the song's key, which I think is E minor. And they eventually decided that they were going to replace that with an electronic drum machine and the VSC8, which Simon mentioned. So what they did was they kind of came up with a note sequence, just a couple of notes in a sequence, and they recorded it. And then what they did was they sped up the sequence, so it sounded like this pattern, this repeating pattern. And then they added an electronic drum, or just an electronic drum over it. And then they were just adjusting the sound of this sequence on the VSC8 and kind of just mixing the song as if mixing it was the performance. So I think the whole band was either at the VSC8 or at the mixing board console, just playing the mixing console as an instrument. And that's the different filtering sounds that you're hearing. It could be envelope filters or other bass or treble filters on a mixing board. So it's just a very interesting song, and there's a lot of sound effects like footsteps and kind of airport terminal sounds, which relate back to the idea of, I guess, Roger's fear of flying. So that's why they brought that in there.
Yeah,
And,
yeah. And the spoken bits as well, isn't it, Michael?
Right. Tied back into the first song, "Speak to Me," where they have the spoken word throughout the album. So this song used to freak me out, and it still kind of does freak me out if I'm listening to it alone or whatever, especially the end where there's just this big crashing noise. So I do want to mention that it's like one of the first electronic sounding songs that I know of. And in 1973, that's kind of revolutionary. I don't know what before that sounded like On the Run. So I'm going to have to give it a 10 for being, very inventive and pushing the envelope that way and setting up the stage for electronic artists in the later 70s and 80s. So they could have invented a style. I could be wrong, but that's just my opinion. I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, cool. I think, Michael, the answer is that they were part of sort of synthesizer. People were buying synthesizers. And if you're Pete Townsend, you're doing Barbara O'Reilly. That's what he was doing with his Moog. Coming up with it. The Beatles clearly on Abbey Road, they used a Moog on that. So I think there's a kind of there is a sort of an influx of that electronic experimental stuff that went on in the late 60s and continued in the early 70s. And my dad was part of it. He got one big for that. He knew the guy who invented EMS, Tristram Carey, and he went on a course kind of thing, where he had them all in modules. He didn't have so he'd have a filter and you literally plugged them. You had leads and plugged between between the different modules to get sounds. And I think this is part of that kind of slightly more avant-garde. And they've done some, sorry, it's early in the morning. They've done some other some earlier things as well, kind of noise-based things on some of their earlier albums. Just trying to think. There's one about Roger I can't think what it's called. But anyway, so I think this is the latest. The more as you develop a kind of a way of these instruments, using them and fitting them into what you do. So I think they had been doing it before as a kind of avant-garde thing, as it filtered into mainstream really. And so I think that it in a sense is part of a movement. But I know what you mean. It's early and and that kind of using it as a what I would call a soundscape, almost not as a true song, but but to link one song with the next, and to maintain the theme, the themes that we talked about, the Here Today and Gone Tomorrow, that's me, kind of manic laughter kind of thing, fits in with the kind of sanity thing, really nicely is a thing. I think they used to, when the crash happened, when they used to play in concert, they used to have actually a plane that went across the audience and crashed at the far end of the hall. Clearly on wires and not, but so very exciting kind of visual thing when they played it live. DR Guitars, how you doing, Dave? Nice of you to drop in, mate. That's really cool. It's, so I too give it a 10 out of 10 on the grounds it has a VCS3 and my dad. Awesome. No, it's I think it fits in beautifully with the themes. I think it's a experimental progressive thing, and I think it moves to it makes that join into the next piece. They clearly thought about it and joined it together. So I'm giving it a 10 as well.
Cool. Brad.
Well, I'm not going to sort of double up on what everyone's already discussed because we'll be here for an eternity. It's just got that anxious feel. It's brought across, from Breathing the Air. It's got a real anxious feel to it. It's an oscillating 8-note sequence from the synth, and there's some amazing. Oh, added sound effects as white noise, like the plane explosion. Obviously, the fear of the flying thing is a big driving part of the. I guess the putting the explosion at the end of it, because they're probably it's part of the flow of the record as well. Again, for me, I think it's an amazing, innovative sonic exploration for its time. I mean, it was recorded in 72, released 73. I'm not sure I've heard, anything like this prior to this album, like if you're dating it. 10 out of 10 for me, Andrew.
The freak out continues, doesn't it, with this song? I like the fact that you guys mentioned that it's an interlude between the songs. It's a break. It's a breath of something else that's happening. I've got to be honest, guys. I'm giving that a 8 out of 10. But it's very fascinating. It's fascinating if you go, and I think Michael made a reference to it at the top of the introduction. I think the classic album series. If you go and watch the classic album series, Gilmour tells you, shows you, explains to you actually how they did the beat sequence and how they speed it up, and very fascinating. So from that point of view, it's a 10 out of 10, because these guys were certainly revolutionaries. They were, at the cutting edge of something. One point before I pass it on to Michael, though, that I want to talk about after watching that documentary again, is that this album shines because it's a collaborative effort from the band, and the band talk about that themselves too. So whether that's something that goes towards the album being fantastic, well, that's debatable, but certainly, it's a collaborative effort. 8 out of 10, guys.
Yeah. Could I just say one more thing, Michael? Sorry. It occurs to me that, and I said it on here before, but I think it bears repeating, that they toured this for a year before they recorded it.
That's correct.
You go see it all live for a year before you actually recorded it, which is not something you would ever do now. Because pre-internet, people didn't really record stuff unless you went to see the Grateful Dead. But pretty much people didn't record stuff, so you could afford to go out and experiment with stuff and play it live and get a people's feel of it, what they thought of it and stuff and how it worked, which I think is really important. That stuff in the development of this record. Lots of records around here, and as I say, we went out and played stuff live to people who didn't know it and weren't familiar with it. I mean, I've talked on here before about, hearing. You can, if you listen to the BBC sessions of Led Zeppelin, they go into Stairway to Heaven, complete silence. It's pretty much one of the first times they played it. Nobody knows it, therefore it's just another new song that people are playing, and they don't have a concept of it. So I think that's worth saying. It's a sign of the times that in 1973. 72, you could go out and tour an album before you recorded it.
Awesome. Michael, Time is unbelievable.
It's definitely my favorite song on the record, and I think a lot of people are in agreement of that, but I guess we'll see in the comments. Time starts with like a 2-minute intro, which today would not fly at all. And Simon had mentioned earlier that Alan Parsons, who was the producer and engineer, he went to like a clock shop with a bunch of microphones and just recorded these clocks just going off, seconds apart. And I think it was for another project he was recording it for.
Yeah.
And he decided to use it for Dark Side. And for a song like Time, it works perfectly. And I think that NASA used those clocks to wake up astronauts on some
that's right, they did, yes.
mission. I don't know what the mission was, but I think that's what happened. So anyway, there's this 2-minute intro, instrumental, and David Gilmour is using these really cool delay sounds that are different from what he used on previous songs. And And Nick Mason is playing rototoms, which are a different type of
Yeah.
drums. They're a type of tom. So if you think of like Phil Collins, "In the Air Tonight," what he's playing are called tom-toms. So these rototoms are smaller sized, so they're higher in pitch. So they have this high pitch, and I guess Alan Parsons added this reverb to them, which is very unique to this song. You don't really hear that sound on a lot of songs. So the song kind of has this sound signature to it, which is just very interesting, and that's in the first 2 minutes. And when the band comes in, there's obviously the verse and chorus, and then the guitar solo. And I just want to quickly mention how the verse is in this minor key. And then when they get to the part where David Gilmour and Rick Wright are harmonizing with each other, that section is more major. And they play something called major seventh chords, which to listeners sound very relaxing. And I'm going to just turn on my keyboard for a second so I can demonstrate what those chords sound like. And there's a couple of other songs that have these major seventh chords that sound relaxing to a listener. So let me just get on a sound. So the verse is in a minor key. Sorry. And then when it goes to the other section, it's in this kind of major key. So, and the note that makes this so special is this C sharp note. So they're playing a D chord, but the thumb in my right hand is playing a C sharp. So that makes this chord a D major seventh. And when you contrast this chord with the feeling is just almost euphoric. When you've got this minor sound, dark minor, and then you've got this warm kind of sound, A major seventh. So this is a regular A major chord, and then they're making the thumb or the seventh flat, I think.
Wow.
So it's just a beautiful juxtaposition, I guess, between the two sections. And when we get to the guitar solo, that's just that the music is over the verse chords. And then eventually they end up on these, I guess you can call them chorus chords. And it's just unbelievable. And if I can play the guitar solo, I'll do it right now. I pre-recorded the piano part,
brilliant.
the chords. So I just have to turn on my amplifier. And I'm sorry to take up so much time on this. This is my favorite.
This is brilliant, Michael. Brilliant.
My favorite song on Dark Side. So
No problem. Help yourself.
let's just pray I do it right. Oh, and I just have to move my microphone so that I don't blast everyone away. Okay, it's fine. Okay, that's that. I'm gonna turn on my amplifier. Okay. So I pre-recorded.
Probably needs a bit less volume, Michael, just on the guitar.
Less?
Yeah, less volume. Yeah. It may not be very loud. It's loud when I'm listening to it and quite distorted. If maybe that's what you want. But
I will make it just slightly lower.
just saying.
1 second. Okay,
All right, give it a try.
here we go. So I pre-recorded the chords. So when we get to that major section with the major sevenths, that's just the most amazing part. And what David Gilmour plays is just gorgeous. So here we go.
Fantastic. Look at that. Yo.
Little messed
Beautiful.
up, but that's okay.
Fantastic. Oh no, it sounded great. It doesn't like somebody playing it live.
Well, ladies and
Yeah.
gentlemen, you were certainly participants of a special treat. Thank you, Michael. I have to tell you before you go on with the rest of your presentation, I got to echo what Dave and everyone else is saying. Yeah, it's the song that spoke to me the most on this album. It's one of the best guitar solos ever in the world, in the top 10. So, yeah, appreciate it. So anyway, carry on, Michael. Sorry to interrupt.
No, sorry. My segment is so long on this one.
No, it's brilliant. No, there's no such thing as too long.
So after the guitar solo ends, they go back into the verse and chorus, if you want to call it that. And then what happens is they end up back into Breathe. They have a Breathe reprise or reprise, however you want to say it. And that moment to me is just the most fascinating thing that happens, because they reintroduce the theme from Breathe, which is that, which you heard maybe 10, 15 minutes ago. So that is familiar to you again. You're like, oh, we're kind of back here. So that theme is now growing. And that's something that I think they took from classical composers, where you play a theme and then you maybe reinvent the theme, or you restate the theme later on. And so that to me was just unbelievable. And the way that they end the song is similar to the way that they end Breathe, which is the long you live and high you fly. Sorry. So instead of doing landing on that E minor again, they land on B minor. Sorry. So there's that little modulation or variation that allows them to enter the next song, which is Great Gig in the Sky. So they could have ended on E minor, which is how Breathe ends, but they end Breathe Reprise on B minor so that they can do the next song, which is in this key, B minor. So that song is just that's inspired, completely inspired. 20 out of 10.
Wow.
Brad score.
Sorry for that long-winded answer.
No,
but
that's brilliant.
That song
really
is
great.
They took everything that they knew and they put it into that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Simon?
Couldn't agree more.
Just turn off the amp.
No problem.
The fizzing amp, yeah. Well, yes. I mean, like I can't. How do I follow that? I think for me, this has such a personal connection to me. I so identify with this. Ticking away the moments that make up a dull day. You fritter and waste the hours in an offhand way, kicking around on a piece of ground in your hometown. I mean, I'm sure everyone's done that as a kid. It's a kind of universal. To me, comes out this kind of universal feeling of, when you're a kid, you don't notice time, you don't notice it. You're just mucking about and kind of, and then and that thing about then one day you find 10 years have gone behind you. No one told you when to run. You missed the starting gun. It gets me every time on an emotional level. Even when I was 15, it got me, and it gets me at 62 now. There's some great truth in that as a piece of music, and it's something to, great emotion around it as well. And I agree. It's a 20 out of 10 for me, because I think it's a classic from anybody, and completely unsurpassed, really. So I have a great emotional attachment to this, and I love the as you say, the Breathe Reprise, which just brings it down and kind of but it continues the journey onto the next thing. And I think, as you say, Michael, that end bit that goes into Great Gig in the Sky, clearly thought out and organised, and and works so beautifully. I think
Awesome.
So it's a 20 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, well done, Michael. That was brilliant, and it's the song. That's what more can I say? I mean, we're all touched it. The rotor times on the intro, Gilmore's vocal, I want to note in this song in particular, is really strong. He catches the feel of the song perfectly, in my opinion. I absolutely love his lead guitar playing. Most of the time he's brilliant anyway, but this one, it's next level. It's Gilmore. He's timeless. His use of fuzz, his vibrato, his bends. And it's identifiably his style. You can hear him a mile away as soon as he plays.
Yep.
He's Gilmore. No one else plays like that, in my opinion. Brilliant track. It leaves you thinking about your own life, and the time that's passed, and to capture as much of life in the immediate moment as possible. It's definitely my favourite track on the album, probably one of my favourite Pink Floyd songs of all time. So, time of all time. 20 out of 10 as well. Andrew.
Oh, look, it's the song that speaks to me. I've got to echo what you said, Brad. It's my favourite Pink Floyd song, and the fact that Michael played it was an extra thrill and a treat. So thank you. Before I just talk about the song, Brad, do you guys play any Pink Floyd songs in your bands? You guys do anything from Pink Floyd?
In a blues trio I'm in, we used to play Money.
Awesome.
But it used to be pretty much like a stripped down version, because it's 3-piece. So we had to sort of incorporate. I was singing it, playing guitar, trying to cover the 2 guitar parts and everything. So so the bass player was predominantly playing the majority of the riff, and I was doing the tremolo guitar parts and stuff while I was singing. So I played a riff with him, but then when the singing come in, it would be altered. But it's you can't play that song without playing the solo correctly either. You have to play it perfect.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh, look! I agree with you guys. I think it's probably one of the best songs on the album. It's a Brad score for me too. It's 20 out of 10, and I'm happy to say that. I'll just mention one other thing before I pass it on to Michael. The live versions of this song too are very, very good, and you can actually see what Gilmour is playing as well. And on the documentary, that we've mentioned a couple of times on the show, he's playing this song, and it's and I forgot actually, and I watched it a couple of days ago, and I had to watch it 3 or 4 times because, I forgot that he does it. So, and it's so effortlessly played.
Yeah.
That's what pisses me off the most. It's just like,
yes.
And Michael does it, Brad does it. When am I going to do it?
I've been playing
Whatever
it
you
for
like.
15 years, and I messed it up just now, so it's fine.
You can do
But
it.
yeah. Look, look, it's a 20 out of 20. 20 out of 20. Oh,
20 out
it's
of
on the
10.
other side. It's on the other side of the moon, guys.
Yeah.
It's on the dark side.
Yeah, we do. Wish You Were Here I have a little duo, Michael, that I play with a friend of mine.
Oh, you do it too.
So we do Wish You Were
okay.
Here. Well, we do Wish You Were Here.
Okay.
I have a duo as well. I play with a guy called Godfrey Townsend, who I mentioned on one of the previous shows.
Yeah.
Who's the current lead guitarist in the Yardbirds. And we do Wish You Were Here at some local gigs. And maybe sometimes we'll do Breathe and Breathe Reprise. So I remember one time I played Wish You Were Here at my high school, and I think my cable came loose, and it was my turn to solo, and nothing was coming out.
God!
And the next day, someone said, "Wish you could hear." And I was so sad because if you get a solo feature, that's like your biggest moment in your life. So,
as I say to my children, Michael, nobody likes a smart ass.
right. It made me laugh though, so I got through it.
Yeah.
I got over it.
Oh, well, you're still playing music, so it didn't have that much of a detrimental effect on you. You didn't do a complete U-turn, Michael. It's a great song, and I'm just going to echo before I hand. Look, Warren's Deja Voodoo. This album should be required learning in schools. Yeah. The Great Gig in the Sky, Michael.
Great Gig in the Sky was written by Rick Wright, and he just had this piano sequence that I kind of played a little bit of before, but it's really beautiful. And Rick Wright is the reason that I bought a piano. So thank you, Rick Wright. He just plays for the song, and he never overplays. And I always liked that. He's a songwriter, I guess. So it's just an amazing song. And then it goes into this kind of 2-chord sequence, which goes back to Breathe, which has that 2-chord sequence. So there's a lot of these 2-chord sequences on this album mixed with some jazz chords. And eventually, I think what they wanted to do, or maybe it was Alan Parsons' idea, to bring in a female vocalist. And the band didn't really have any direction for her. They just said, just sing over this section. And so she sang a couple of takes, and she was saying, "Ooh, baby, baby," and the band didn't like that. So she just did this wordless thing, and she was told to think about death and dying and fear. And so I think within a couple of takes, she got the takes that they used or compiled for the finished version. And I think she left the studio. She may have been paid a few $100s or something like that.
£30, Michael. She was paid £30. Yes.
£30. Wow.
Not a few hundred.
Does that even cover gas money? Wow.
Well, in 1973, yeah.
Yeah, and then she eventually took them to court because she wanted to get songwriting credits for it, because she wrote that vocal melody, or she improvised that vocal melody that the song is famous for. So Claire Torrey was just this incredible session vocalist. And I don't really know her other work, but her work on that song, her performance is just outstanding. And I get chills every time I listen to it. I'm going to give this song a 9 out of 10.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Simon.
I think, yeah, you're right. Yes, it's. Yes, yes, she got £30 for the session, Claire Torrey, which was such standard session, which I guess in 1973 is, well, that could be a week's wages, probably, for an average person. In fact, probably more than that, to be honest. So, in 1973 terms, for a couple of hours work to get 30 quid is pretty good. That's what musicians did. I'm going to digress a minute. Rick Wakeman was, the keyboard player Rick Wakeman, who's going around, and he had a thing where he needed 30 quid to pay the rent or something, and so he went around various studios. Nobody was doing anything, and he found Mark Bolan recording. What's it? So the guy who's doing it said, "Do you want to play on it? Go and do a piano glissando run down the thing." So he just went out, and I can't remember which is it. Get It On, I think is he just has at the beginning. There's just this piano, which is Rick Wakeman earning his 15 quid for his rent. He doesn't play on the rest of it. He just does that piano thing at the beginning. Wow. Just to get money. So that paid his rent for the month, 15 quid. So, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting to note that kind of the great gig in the sky clearly refers to a death thing, and Rick Wright had the chord progression, which was variously called the Mortality Sequence or the Religion Song, and they kind of, when they first did it live, they had kind of spoken word samples. So they had from the Bible and snippets of a speech by a British writer called Malcolm Muggeridge, who famously had an argument with John Cleese about the life of Brian, which is well worth looking up. But Alan Parsons knew Claire Torrey and got her in. He said, she can do it. I think the reason they didn't want the ooh babies and stuff, they said to her, if we wanted that, we'd have got Doris Troy to come in and do it as a soul singer. That's what we don't want. So I think it, although it's a typical Floyd thing, isn't it? You just go in and do something, and we'll give you some direction, a bit. So I think it's absolutely classic Floyd that there's a bit of that going on. All we know is we need something to do, and so they just, as you say, did a few short takes, and she just improvised over them and wordlessly and stuff. And I think the effect is incredible to me. As I say, if I think me lying out under the stars, listening to that, you can imagine the effect, of that on a 15-year-old, 14-year-old person, of that. And so, as I say, this is just one of my favorite albums of all time. I can't resist giving it a 10 because I think it does a fantastic job. It's beautifully pitched, builds, Rick Wright's playing is fantastic on it. And the feeling it has, the vibe, the emotion that it has in it is amazing, and if you're sitting out lying under the stars, it's, it'll take you to places. So I absolutely am giving it a 10. And I think that, it's
awesome. Brad?
Well, for me, it's one of the most beautiful pieces of piano work ever. Beautiful chord structure. I love the spoken words to add the drama to the song. The pedal still adds that spacey feel again. Epic dramatic vocal from Claire Torrey. It's epic. It captures the feel and energy of what dying must be like. That's and then it's got that peaceful energy towards the end. Peace and harmony right at the end. It's a beautiful piece. It leads, to the end of the first side. I believe that's the end of the first side. Is it?
It is. Yep. Yeah, that's right.
So, this is hard to remember because I've only ever had it on CD.
It is the end of the first side.
But a beautiful way to end the first side of the LP, a 10 out of 10 for me. Andrew?
Yeah, I like the fact that these guys planned something. You know, the introduction of the feminine voice at the end of this album on side one is a masterstroke. You know, it's you're listening to a mechanical thing happening as well. You know, with some of the songs, you're listening to, you know, classic instruments that you can identify with the slide guitar and the guitar and, you know, everything else. And then bang, you've got this, the feminine mystique, you know, which is the balance that you need, which is bringing you back, you know, to the journey that this album is. It's a masterstroke. I love the way that bands plan this. I don't think it's an accident. It can't be. It's not. It's a 10 out of 10 for me, and just simply because of the vocal harmonies that this lady, this woman gives. And I certainly hope, Michael, she got more. And did she end up getting?
She got royalties. She gets royalties from it now.
It was
okay,
and a writing credit.
Had a court settlement and a writing credit. So
okay, so she got back paid. That's good.
Dare say.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I don't think there was anything malicious on behalf of the band from the research that I've come across. It was just, as Simon mentioned earlier, it was just one of those things that musicians did, and if you were smart enough to have a clever lawyer when the album turned out to be one of the greatest albums in the world, to get a piece of that pie, good on you.
Said, doesn't it? Well, clearly, you know, she went in and improvised something, so you know she deserves a co-composition credit with Rick Wright.
Absolutely.
You know, on the grounds that, you know, nobody else told us what to sing. You know, they clearly didn't tell her what to sing. They told her what not to sing a bit, but you know,
Simon, it could have been a dud.
Invention.
Could have been a dud album, you know.
Yeah.
Only 20 albums of it sold.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it could have been, which is always the way for the session musician, isn't it? I just found a little thing, something I copied in. Is that apparently Alan Parsons invited her to the studio to sing on it. She declined this invitation because she wanted to watch Chuck Berry at the Hammersmith Odeon. So she came on Sunday instead. She got her priorities right. Yeah, nah, I can't come in that day. I'm going to see Chuck Berry. Everyone stops for Chuck.
All right. Side two, Michael. Side two.
Before we enter side two, if you listen to the end of Great Gig in the Sky very loud, which I do, and I imagine most of us do, you hear this G minor chord. But I think what Alan Parsons did, or another engineer did, they sped up the tape for some reason, for maybe the transitioning purposes into the next song, which is Money. But I'm going to just make my piano a little bit loud. If you're listening loud to the album, at the end of Great Gig in the Sky, you'll hear this.
Oh, he tunes it up, yeah.
And what I'm doing, I'm just increasing the pitch using a pitch bend wheel on this piano. But they probably had to speed up the tape for some reason because of whatever running time or whatever they were trying to do. And that's just like a small thing that I've noticed just listening to that. Have you guys heard that or no?
Yeah.
I can't say I'm consciously aware of it, but guess what I'm going to be doing after the show?
Going back and having a listen. Yeah, absolutely. I can't say consciously notice that.
Wow.
I'll look and listen. I can't consciously think of it either.
Brad,
strange.
No, I've noticed that because I listen to these in headphones. Yeah, so you can really, if you listen in headphones, you can pick up all these little things. Yeah, for sure. Plus, this version I've got it is like a reissued one. I don't think this is the one that's done in 5.1 as well. So it's really, really well mixed.
Okay.
You mentioned headphones. A lot of engineers and producers and live sound engineers will use Dark Side of the Moon when they're maybe tuning a PA system or a studio because they know how this album is supposed to sound. This album is recorded and mixed so well, and people know how it sounds. So if you're listening in a room, you can, tune your mixing board or tune your PA to this album, and this album is just known as one of the best recorded and mixed albums. So I'll use it if I'm trying out headphones or new speakers because I know how these songs sound. So if the bass sounds too much or too little, then maybe that speaker or maybe that headphone is not right for me. So a lot of people use this as a reference album. So that's an important thing for producers, I guess.
That's because there's not a lot of bass on this album.
Yeah. Yeah. It's balanced very well. It's not boomy at all.
Yeah.
No.
Good point. Thank you. Thank you, Michael.
No problem.
Side 2, Michael.
Does it start with money? I stopped
It
writing.
does.
I stopped.
Yeah,
writing,
it does.
I stopped writing notes after time because that's all I wanted to talk about.
I'm sure you've got. I'm sure you can wing side 2. I'm sure of it.
Yeah, I think I'll be able to get through a few of them. So Money is an interesting song for musicians, especially drummers, because the song is in a different time signature. And a time signature is the most common time signature is 4/4. So just 1, 2, 3, 4. But this song, Money, is in, I believe, 7/4. So dun 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 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3. So that's not common for people, and when drummers play it for the first time, they're like, something's wrong. The drummer's playing the wrong thing. What? And even other band members can't keep up. So this song taught me to be a better musician and be more rounded and listen to other styles of music that have more complex time signatures. So this song expanded my knowledge. So at one point in the song, they go from that 7/4 that I was just clapping out into 4/4, which is just more just familiar to a listener. So that's when the guitar solo happens. There's like a drum fill that goes into the guitar solo, which is in 4/4, and that moment is just incredible because the guitar solo, as we mentioned before, is just so exciting. And if you're playing it, you have to play it note for note because Gilmour solos are like Bible verses. You can't. They're perfect, and you have to recite them that way. And if you want, I can play that. Again, I don't want to cut into too much time. I can play one of the solos from Money or whatever if we want.
No problem. Yeah.
Go for it.
Go for it.
Great. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I think these things come alive if you can play them. Absolutely, Michael. So please do.
All right. I'm gonna just take a little bit of reverb off because Time has a lot more reverb on the solo, I think. And this one, not so much. Okay, so they go from 7/4 the. I think I'm doing it too slow. And then what happens there is they turn off the reverb. I have delay
Right,
on
yeah.
too. So I could keep doing it, but you get the point. So, and it goes on for another solo or two. So Gilmour really gets a feature in that song, besides Time. So that's his other big moment, I guess, on the album. And I have to give this song a 10 out of 10 for just expanding my musical knowledge. And it's just a really fun song. And the tape loops that Roger Waters created of the cash register sounds to open the song, and it's interspersed throughout the song. Very cool. 10 out of 10.
Wow. Simon.
Yeah, completely. I mean, yes, I think that clearly, this is about money and about what the trappings of wealth bring you and things. Because I think that and I can see that from Roger Waters' position. Oh right. Sorry, I was having a conversation with Dave from DR Guitars, who's saying that there's a single bar of 6/4 to transition to the 4/4, which is interesting. I've never noticed before. I'll go and listen to that. Thank you, Dave. That's cool. So I think that it is looking at the possibilities if you're going to earn a lot of money, and what that might do to you, and how what.
Nothing wrong with earning a lot of money.
Well,
when you ain't got much.
Well, no, that's true. Well, it is interesting that David Gilmour, there's an interview with David Gilmour where he says, money interested me enormously. Oh, the song, not her. Money.
That's
the thing.
correct.
I remember thinking, well, this is it, and I have to decide whether I'm really a socialist or not. I'm still keen on general welfare society, but I became a capitalist. You have to accept it. I remember coveting a Bentley like crazy. The only way to get things like that was through rock or the football pools. And I very much wanted all that material stuff. So I think that that they must have been earning reasonably before that. So clearly part of Waters' preoccupation with the world is, and our progression through it, which we're talking about as a concept on this album. We arrive at the earning of money and people's working lives and things. So always love this as a thing. I think that the interesting thing for me is that we've not talked about at all. We land on side 2. We've not talked about Nick Mason's drumming or Roger Waters' bass playing at all.
Not yet.
Not yet. No. Well, but I think it's interesting that we haven't particularly that. Yeah, I mean, I think Nick Mason's a great drummer, and he does Pink Floyd. He's a bit like sort of the Ringo Starr of Pink Floyd. Without him, it wouldn't be Pink Floyd. It would be something else.
People call him the heartbeat.
Yeah.
I agree. Yep.
Yes.
He's also the reason I bought a drum set. So I bought a drum set because of Nick Mason. I bought this keyboard because of of Rick Wright. So
Pink Floyd has much to be blamed for, Michael, in your musical.
Yeah.
And I told this story last week, but I'll say it again. And I once, when I was about 8 years old, fell into Nick Mason's mum and dad's swimming pool. Because my dad did a lot of films in the 60s, and Bill Mason was a film guy, I think, for BP, for the oil companies. And so my mum and dad knew him. So we were on our way to France, and we stayed over in their house in Chichester. And they had a diving board, which just basically was hooked underneath these rollers. And I went and stood on the diving board, and the diver then rolled out gracefully from under its moorings and went into the water. So did I. And I couldn't swim. I was reminding my mum that she said somebody to my dad, I think, had to dive in and get me out before I drowned. That's my other claim to fame, is I've fallen into Nick Mason's mum and dad's swimming pool, which is hilarious. But I mean, I give Money a 10. I think it's an absolute, classic from this album. I think it was a single actually from this, and it was all over the sort of rock discos that I went to when I was 15 or 16. Absolutely, one of the staples of those things. And I don't know how we danced to it, but anyway, and probably did.
7/4.
Find something to do. Dance to 7/4, yes. How difficult can it be when you're 15? But I think it's great. And also, I think I wanted to point out was that I think it was pretty much, I'd forgotten that this is pretty much the first time I'd ever heard any kind of swear words. I don't think, Pre and Priors, I can't think of a record, not any kind of mainstream record which had any kind of language on it at all. I mean, really none at all, unless they were smuggling it in the background, which is entirely possible. I hadn't noticed, which is fine. But the sort of "don't give me that do goody good" bullshit was the first time I'd heard any, and the spoken vocals as well, the spoken stuff that they recorded. I'm always absolutely fucking bonkers. That. This is the first time I'd ever heard any swearing, really, on an album. And clearly had an effect, because I still can't think of any other albums that had it particularly. But I'm sure they were, but not until later. So, yes, a 10 out of 10 for me, and one of the timeless classics on this album. I think, I love the sax solo on it. I love the, the funky guitar and the electric piano that goes with it. It's just great. And I love the spoken vocals of over the fade about an altercation, a fight kind of thing. And the bridge to the next song. Anyway,
Someone just mentioned there's a measure of 6/4 before the 4/4 over the E minor chord, and so they're talking about the saxophone when it goes da 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 da. So 1, 2, done. I'm gonna just count it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Da 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 da. So
Dave, well done.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Da 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 da. I didn't know that. I didn't know that until whoever wrote that was there.
Dave from DR Guitars. Yeah.
That's cool. I did not know that.
Yeah, Dave.
Thank you,
yes,
Dave.
Clearly. Well done.
So
Dave.
this is a cool learning experience.
Yeah, that's our audience. They know what they're talking about. That's the point. Yeah.
4,
Brilliant.
6, 4, 4, 4. Yeah. This is a very complex song.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to hand it over to the guy that plays it live in a gig situation. Brad. So how do you manage to do all these different time signatures?
Had you noticed, Brad?
Yeah. You just play. That's the best way.
You just play it.
Concentrate on timing. It F's you up. I'm not going to say the swear word, but yeah. If you concentrate too much on it, you're going to come undone. So you get the feel for the song. You got to lean on your rhythm section quite a bit, but it's just a matter of just falling in. I never really concentrate when I'm playing live, worrying about time structures and that, because I just concentrate on playing the song. So
you know the song.
Yeah, well, if it's in your head, you just sort of play it, don't you? But you're not sitting. Yeah. Well, for me, I don't sit there and analyze it that way. I do when I'm learning it, obviously, but not when I'm playing it. So I try not to concentrate on that, because if you've got to sing, play guitar, and fill in all the little gaps and everything, and you start thinking about time signatures as well, that's a drummer's job. And if they stuff it up, you just turn around to 7. If they stuff it up, you turn around, look at them, and just go like, "What the hell was that?" So, yeah. Even if you stuff up at something, you turn around and look at them, and then people think they stuffed it up. So, yeah. So money for me. I mean, look, money. We all love money. It's captivating before you even hear a note. The title of the song.
Yeah.
And it's really captivating when you hear the loop of the ringing cash register, the coins in the bowl. You're sort of stuck into it already before the song even starts. But the 7/4 time signature, it's a great feel and great vocal. Like we got to go back to the vocal. We're concentrating a lot on guitar, but the vocal's great. I love the tremolo guitar part, which is the part I used to play the riff, but then when I was singing, it was one of those things where you just had to get the tremolo timing right, which that's when you have to think about timing when you're setting your tremolo setting or something like that. But mine was tapped, so Yeah. So you could tap tempo it. So if the drum was a little bit faster, your tremolo would be in time. But yeah, I love my favourite part of the song is where it goes to 4/4 feel, obviously, and Gilmour just kicks into that lead guitar solo. I mean, that's the whole reason I love this song. I'll be honest with you. I love the song as an entirety, but the solo, it lifts to another. It's like goes to another stratosphere and then comes back to the 7/4 feel. So much space between his notes, and also I got to note the great saxophone playing, and I think the guy's name was Dick Parry.
Dick Parry. Yep.
Beautiful saxophone playing. 10 out of 10 for me. Never a skip. Andrew.
Look, I agree with you. It's a 10 out of 10. There's two things that I love about the song. It's the bass playing. You can actually hear the bass, and that's obviously because of the timing that we've just discussed and that Micheal has elaborated for us. But I love the bass. That's the first time I can actually hear it on the album and the solo, Brad. It's it's at another level. Not quite up there with Time, but pretty close. And I'm going to echo, because you've been reading my notes again, that space between the notes, definitely a Gilmour thing. These English guys do it well, and it's a constant theme, isn't it? Page can do it well, Clapton does it well, Peter Green did it well. That space between the notes, it's just something I think is phenomenal. It's a 10 out of 10 for me, and it's never a skip. Yeah. And deservedly so, a single song. It's probably, one of the half a dozen songs that everybody knows when you talk about Pink Floyd. If you play that song, the ordinary people out there are going to say, oh, yeah, I know that song. So, yeah, well done.
Yeah.
Micheal.
So...
the next song is it Us and Them?
Us and Them.
You've got it.
So Us and Them kind of starts off with an organ just kind of fading in, and there's just a bunch of like sounds. It's very textural, and that's also what this album is. It's a very textural, layered album, and things build up and break down throughout the album, and that's what's, I guess, so exciting, because all these new elements appear. So Money kind of fades out, and then there's this distant sounding organ that's played by Rick Wright, and eventually this breathtaking drum pattern, which is similar to Breathe, I guess, Nick Mason, that enters, and Gilmour's pattern on guitar as well enters at the same time as the drums. So everything that happens there is just breathtaking. They're beautiful chords, and I can just play the quick chords, and then this one.
Yeah, that's the beautiful one.
So what's happening here is the bass notes are staying the same on the piano. D, 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 D. And when I'm saying D, I'm referring to the bass notes. Mm-hmm. What Roger Waters is doing, he's doing, and that's just going throughout the song. And it's just beautiful, the way everything pieces together with the drums, the bass, the piano, and Gilmour's guitar, which again, he's got that univibe on, which he had on Breathe. So there's that reemergence of that effect. And something I wanted to mention about this album that makes it kind of very interesting, and I realized this yesterday, is that there's not one chorus on the entire album.
No, there's not. Nope.
The music stays the same. So in the chorus, what we think is the chorus is the "Forward he cried from the rear, That's the chorus. But the lyrics change every chorus. Forward he cried from the rear. And then the second time is, haven't you heard? It's a battle of words. And then the last time is, out of the way, it's a busy day. I've got things, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
the lyrics change, but the music is staying the same. The listeners can't grasp onto anything. And there's no lyrical chorus on the entire album. In Breathe, Time, Money,
Nope.
it changes every chorus. Yet this album was on the charts for 14 years. So there's something deeper that's happening. Because today, if there's no chorus, if you're not humming the melody, if you're not singing the words over and over again, then your song is a failure. So what is it about this album? Is it like it's a piece? It's almost like an
Is
album.
it Michael that actually the musically there are choruses, but vocally lyrically there aren't?
Yeah, I think
Kind of
so.
thing, you know what I mean?
Right.
You get a recurring theme that, as you've just demonstrated, that is a chorus. It's just that it's not acknowledged as a chorus in terms of the lyrics.
Right. Yeah, I think
Which
you're
is
right.
really interesting. Yeah.
So that's something that I noticed yesterday or 2 days ago, just listening to it. And I said, why can't I remember the second chorus? Because it changes. I was just playing through it, and I said, I can't remember this. And that's Roger Waters is a genius lyricist, and I'm not a lyricist. And he had a reason for doing that. But a song that is more memorable has a repeating hook. So I'm surprised that I didn't recognize that until now, and I've known this album for 15 years.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I hadn't figured that either until you said it. Yeah,
so
it's a brilliant observation.
It's just a beautiful song. I love the saxophone solo. There's a lot of layering of vocal harmonies in the choruses, if we want to call them choruses, the chorus music.
Why not?
And it's just a beautiful song, and I give it a 10 out of 10.
Awesome. It's the building and the dropping, isn't it? And as you say, coming to those choruses, and it's got those really big vocals, and just brilliantly done, brilliantly organised. Yeah, I mean, just a few notes I've discovered it. The tune was originally written on piano by Rick Wright for the film Zabriskie Point. I don't know if anyone's seen that, in 1969, and was titled The Violent Sequence. So you can see that the sort of these titles that Rick Wright had for these kind of, I presume he, triggered off things, about the lyrics that Waters put in. The lyrics were clearly, they describe the senseless nature of war and the ignorance of modern day humans who have been taken over by consumerism and materialism. In an interview, Waters shared that the first verse is about war, how on the front line we don't get much chance to communicate with one another because someone has just decided that we shouldn't. Second verse is about civil liberties, racism and colour prejudice. And the last verse is about passing a tramp on the street and not helping. So sort of humanising. Yeah, it is, Down and out. Down and out. It can't be helped, but there's a lot of it about. No, indeed, yeah.
You're talking about what he's saying the song's about.
No, what he's
okay.
saying. No, but the third verse.
No, I'm just teasing you. I'm teasing you, Simon.
And I'm easily teased. But yes, it's interesting to note that that's what Roger Waters' interpretation of it is. It may not be yours, but
no, it's not mine.
Good, that's all right. That's fine. That's good. As I say, I love the chorus. I love the way that it builds, and it's got those massive vocals in the choruses, and the sax solos. I think they're great, and there's beautiful piano playing from Rick Wright, who is just a sort of master at that type of piano playing. I don't think of anybody who plays it like him, particularly not like that. And I'm giving it a 10 clearly because I think it's a great song and
awesome,
beautifully put together.
Brad.
Us and Them, beautiful piece of music, absolutely gorgeous. Highlights for me. I mean, I love that.
I'll be back in a minute.
I love that spacey guitar with the univibe sound. Anyone that knows me well, and I'm sure Andrew, you've seen me on Instagram jamming or whatever. 9 times out of 10, I've always got a univibe on because it's my sound. So I absolutely love it. I love the vocals; are so laid back but dynamic. I love the use of the echo. There's a dramatic lift in the song and the amazing harmonies, which we identified. There's no real chorus, so that's like the lift part of the song for me. And the background vocals are phenomenal, and it's very dramatic. I love the use of the saxophone, and I gave it 10 out of 10. It's never a skip. Andrew.
Yeah, look, I got to agree with you guys too. It's a 10 out of 10 for me. We keep talking about these English cats being great guitar players. Let's have a nod to the English keyboardists. A couple of weeks ago we did John Lord. Eric Clapton's had some phenomenal keyboard players over the years. And a lot of them have been English guys. So. And the fact that the keyboardist in Pink Floyd is, according to the documentary I watched, a jazz nut. He's a jazz fan. And Michael mentioned that earlier on one of the other songs that we discussed, that he took a chord from Kinda Blue, Miles Davis, and incorporated that. So there's some sophistication going on this album. And again, I got to echo what Michael said. This was on the charts for 741 weeks or something. No chorus, which means that it's suicide today for an album. Even a song, even a single just wouldn't last. Is this something that's reflective of what people were doing back in the 70s? Were they more sophisticated, the listeners? We talk about the bands that we admire and that we rate being sophisticated, but maybe there was something going on with the ordinary people buying albums. Maybe that's something we can talk about. But look, it's a 10 out of 10. I get the fact that us and them, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing that you can take in your life, us and them. Who are us and who are they? It's a smart thing, deep thinking, philosophical album. Love it.
Beautiful.
After a song like Money, it's a nice little, breath. It's a nice relaxing. At least the intro of Us and Them is relaxing, and then it has that lift, as you have mentioned before. But it kind of has this. It kind of has a like an John Lennon Imagine feel, like a rolling piano. You know what I mean? It could be. It's got that similar feel to it, that rolling piano that a lot of piano players take when they're just writing music or performing with others. Yeah, a comment. People actually had an attention span. Yes. Funny. Okay, the next song on the album. So at the end of Us and Them, they kind of transition from the chorus. So and then they go up to into Any Color You Like. So they use the last chord as the transition chord into the next song, which is a C major, and then they just move it up to a D minor of sorts. I think this is called a D minor seventh, and then they go to a G major suspended, and then they release the chord, so they just make it less tense. And it's just it's like a 2-chord song, similar to Breathe, which is, so there's that connection again. So maybe it's just a variation on a theme of Breathe, which is much earlier. And this song, I think, starts with Rick Wright does a synthesizer solo, and it's just a very colorful sounding solo from Rick. And it's cool. It's, if you saw it live, it would be a very cool moment to get a feature from a keyboardist like that. And then eventually Gilmour breaks through, and he has, I think, his Univibon or Leslie speaker, which is used on organs, on his guitar. And I actually have a similar, or I simulated the sound myself. And I just want to quickly show you what he does, if I can. I know we're kind of running low on time. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to record a little backing track live. So what I'm going to do, so I'm going to click record on. One more time. Okay, so now I've got that recorded, so I can now play that back and play over it. So earlier I was just changing a sound on my little Line 6 Pod XT, which is just an amp and effect simulator. And it's a very cool device. You can simulate different amps, different effects. So I created a lot of Gilmour sounds, if you will. Let's see. Uh-oh. What have I done? One second.
Technology perils.
Yeah. Okay, that's better.
Yeah.
Cool.
So he's got that Leslie sound on his guitar. And I'm going to just leave this microphone here so we can hear this.
Yep.
So something Gilmour does that I just wanted to mention was that he plays a note that doesn't really sound like it fits, but he kept it. And there's this kind of dissonance where you feel like something is wrong, but he kept it, so I guess he intended it to be there. So let's see. I'm going to just play this for a second. So I needed to think of the part. It's oh, okay. It's this part. He plays this note over this chord. He plays an F sharp over a G chord, and I can't really think of the notes before it. I would have to play the whole song. So. I can't think of it now, but anyway, he plays this dissonant note over a G chord. So it's just very interesting when you hear it. And they kept it. So I guess they liked it enough, or they wanted to create that dissonance for the listener. Next time I'll practice that so I know it. But it's just a very interesting thing that they do. And it's just a great great instrumental track on the album. And something else that they do to end the song is that they use the chord sequence from Breathe at the end of Breathe. So again, the long you live and how you fly, da 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 da. So they do on this guitar this sequence of notes. So that transitions them into Brain Damage Eclipse. But as I just said, what they're actually doing, they're playing the chord sequence from Breathe. So instead of this, they're doing da 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 da. What is the chord? Da 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 da. So that da da, which is the same thing that goes into Breathe. Da da. They use that chord sequence, but they modulated it into another key. So they considered that, I guess, a theme. That chord sequence that Rick Wright took from Kind of Blue, and they modulated it in Any Color You Like so that they could get into the next song. So again, that relates back to what classical composers do, where they put a variation on a theme. So I just picked that up like a day or two ago after knowing the album for 15 years. So it's amazing that I'm still learning from.
We'll never listen to this album again
the same way.
The way brilliant. That we've listened to it before this program.
I'm never going to lie out on the parapet of my parents' house listening to that.
I forgot to rate the song. I'm going to give the song a 9 out of 10 just because of that feature that I just mentioned.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Simon.
I think, to me, yes, I haven't got much to add to that. I mean, I think for me the interesting is that on this album, they're not afraid of an instrumental, are they? They're not afraid to do an instrumental passage, and have singing either side and whatever. And I think that's to their credit. They come up with something and they don't necessarily go, well, it needs to have lyrics. If it stands on its own and works as a piece of music, then it's in, isn't it? And they do something. And they don't necessarily consider just writing more lyrics over it, which I think is to their credit. And I think makes this album flow, and it makes it join together. And as you say, Michael, doing those, the refrain of the themes that they had earlier is fantastic. Particularly keyboards doing it rather than anything else. But so yeah, I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. I think it's a lovely, lovely song, and I would never skip it, never in 100 years.
Brad?
Well, for me, great instrumental track with the synth predominantly up front. I love the feel. We mentioned before that we don't really talk about the bass and drums, but I put in here the bass is hopping through the drum rhythm. So it's actually like it's in syncopation with the kick and the snare, which is something that's really stood out to me more so than any other tracks, that they worked really well to get on this song. Look, I love uni vibe guitars, so the tones, the solo and the panning, the second guitar solo parts, like there's 2 tracks there recorded. And for me, I'm not 100% sure, but for me, I think Gilmour was channeling his inner Hendrix on this one. I don't know whether anyone's going to argue with me on this or not, but I can hear a big Hendrix vibe in the soloing. For that reason and that reason alone, and I love univibe guitars, so I gave it 10 out of 10, and I'll never skip it. Andrew?
It was pretty hard for me because I didn't. I'm careful about how I do my rankings leading up to the next song. So I've given it a 10 out of 10 because I think it's one of Gilmour's deep cut solos. Everyone will talk about Time, for example, and correctly so, and a couple of songs on the wall. But I think this song,
Comfortably
instrumental,
numb,
is a deep cut. I'm not going to argue with you about the Hendrix vibe going on because I remember reading somewhere where someone said it could have even have been inspired by Robin Trow, because he was around at the same time too. So, and we all know that Trow's the white Hendrix. So, yeah. So, but there's definitely got, there's that thing going on that's not identifiably Gilmour.
Yeah.
There is a linkage back there to something. 10 out of 10. Thank you, Michael, for the elaboration too. It's fantastic. Thank you.
I'm happy that I figured it out yesterday, or 2 days ago.
Aren't we lucky? Aren't we lucky to have that
brilliant.
premiered on our show? Thank you.
Thanks for having me on because it forced me to re-listen to it, which is always a good thing. I spent some time away from it because I listened to it so much, but to come back to it and hear new things, and that's the thing about good albums, that you hear new things every time you listen to them.
Yeah. Well, and that's something that we talk about too, Michael. Simon said that he hadn't heard last week, Blind Faith for a long time, and going back to it, and I hadn't heard Deep Purple's Machine Head, for a long time. So it's great to go back and re-engage with these albums that meant a lot to us. Thank you for highlighting that. So, Brain Damage, Michael.
Brain Damage. So this song is supposedly about Syd Barrett and his mental deterioration, I guess, in the late 60s, and his exit from the band, and also just about people who have, I guess, that mental illness or things related to that in their life. So that is, again, a theme in life, and that's what this album is about. And so I guess it made sense to put that towards the end. So it's also a kind of closure thing for, I guess, Roger with Syd, and also on the album. So it is thematic in that sense. Brain Damage is, again, a fantastically constructed song. And this is actually an example of a song. This actually sounds more like a song than most of the other songs on the record. Those are more, I guess, experimental, but Brain Damage actually sounds like a song from another band. Another band could release it. In the way that it's arranged and, I guess, produced. Something interesting to show musically is that they're going back and forth between major chords and seventh chords. So that song is just very identifiable by those two chords. Where is it? So that instantly makes you think that this is that song. But more importantly than that is the fact that they keep this bass note the same as the chords change. They keep the D note the same, which is a thing called an ostinato, or or a pedal tone, actually, is a better term for it. When you keep the bass note the same, but you change the chords that are happening above it. So you raise the blade, you make the change. So this bass note is staying the same. They could have done You raise the blade, you make the change, but the fact that they keep this note the same creates this kind of tension. You raise the blade, you make the change, so that's just interesting to me. That why did they do that? I don't know why, but they created that tension, and maybe that's what they were looking to do. And only later in the song, when there's this little synth solo before it goes into Eclipse, they go, and then so right there it goes from they could have done, but they don't. They actually move up from finally. And so they really thought about these songs. They must have spent so much time with these songs that they perfected them. They could have done what they did earlier in the song, but no, they said, oh, let's do this here. And that's what makes it really special to me. And of course, I have to mention the chorus backing singers. I don't know all of their names, but they're amazing. And they intensify the song. They get the song to where it needs to be, and perfectly transition into Eclipse. So I give the song a 10 out of 10.
Awesome, Simon.
Yes. I mean, yes, for me. I mean, I think it's as you say, it's about, clearly about Syd Barrett, and the line way down this. About the second to third to last line was, and if the band you're in starts playing different tunes, which is a reference to Syd Barrett, who played different tunes than the rest of them when he was in his declining time with the Floyd, and before he's replaced by Gilmour. But you see that's clearly it's about that, keeping the lunatics off the grass, literally and metaphorically, possibly, but. I mean, I think I think it's a beautiful song, as you say. The soaring backing vocals at the end with the keyboards is just, another magical song. And I think, Michael, what you were saying about, because they toured with it, for a year, played it, pretty much live, and gone over it and over and over. You're going into it kind of with it sorted, aren't you? You're not jamming it in the studio and that sort of thing, which produces a completely different thing. What you're doing is you're taking in, which is what I think of the Floyd. I think of structure and organisation, and they've thought about it, and they've clearly, organised it so that it works in a particular way. And and you've demonstrated beautifully that, that their thought process in playing the chords and what they play, and and Rick Wright is clearly a great keyboard player and a great musician and understands these things. And I think it's fantastic to point those things out. I mean, so I'm giving this a 10 as well. I'm not deviating from the 10s, I'm afraid. I mean, it's for me again, that line out on the thing and listening to that sound sweep over you is just it's just amazing, really. It takes me back, to that time. So I too am giving it a 10. I have nowhere else to go with it. Brad.
Well, I can only describe this song in 4 words: lovely, dramatic, sympathetic, spooky. Beautiful guitar playing and sounds, dramatic background vocals. The Dark Side of the Moon references from, obviously, the title of the album is from this song. And, I'm not going to touch more on anything else than you guys already have. Otherwise, we'll be here forever. It's 10 out of 10 for me, never a skip.
Yeah.
Andrew.
So the backing singers apparently are Doris Troy, Leslie Duncan, Lisa Strike, and Barry St. John. And Roger the Hat spoke the words.
What a great name, Roger the Hat. Yes.
Look, before I knew anything about who Sid Barrett was, and his demise through drug use, etc. This was kind of a spooky song. It was a freak out song, and talking to guys, over the years, it was a freak out song for a lot of people, and probably a freak out song, I think, for Pink Floyd, in a positive sense, because they had to pay, certainly Roger did, tribute to Sid, because Sid got them to a point, didn't he? As far as being a band and a reputation for providing something that was a little bit different from the rest of the establishment and English bands. Again, something that the English do really, really well. And I like it when a band or a band member pays tribute to somebody that paved the way for the success of the band. That's always nice. And it's a good thing to see and hear and witness. It's a 10 out of 10 for me, guys. I just love the spoken word. It just fits in well, doesn't it, with that the whole theme of the album. And it's hard for me to sort of, I won't talk anymore because it leads into the other song. I don't see these two songs as a bit like Brad. The first two songs, he couldn't see a dichotomy between them. I never saw a dichotomy between these last two songs over the last 10, 15 years. I see them as, one song, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that you're right, that Roger Waters continued the themes of insanity and stuff, didn't he? And that thing about, with Sid Barrett, kept going back to it, didn't he?
I think it's a warning sign too.
Yeah.
It's a warning sign because Roger Waters certainly is a very grounded individual, and that groundedness that Gilmour had too led to divisions in the band, unfortunately. And for a long, long time they never spoke, did they? So up until recently, I think they had a hug or something like that, and they did a couple of things together. But I've read somewhere too that it was also Roger Waters' way of sounding an alarm to people about the excesses of recreational drug use, I suppose, too. And there's an argument there in that too, because ultimately, what is it going to lead to? Insanity, which isn't a good thing.
So
Michael.
brain damage transitions perfectly into Eclipse. I think there's a couple of drum hits or maybe bass drum hits, and then just an explosion of sound. And it's probably the most magnificent moment on the album, compared, side by side with when Claire Torrey enters on Great Gig in the Sky. It's just that explosion of sound. And there's an organ, and Gilmour is hitting high notes on his guitar, and the bass is doing amazing things. Everyone is doing amazing things when Eclipse starts. And then Roger sings the All That You Touch, All That You See. And he's kind of singing the same note throughout the whole song. As the chords don't change throughout the whole song. All that you touch, all that you see, all that you taste. Well, that's a change. So all that you touch, all that you see, all that you taste, all that you feel, and all that you love, and all that you get the point. So that's actually
Kubrick lover. So, sorry, Michael, I'm interrupting. We're just
hey, Kubrick lover.
Quick shout out to a friend of the channel who we haven't seen for a long time. Sorry, Michael.
No
Kubrick
problem.
lover, g'day. please continue, Michael. Sorry.
No problem. So yeah, that song is just amazing. And the way that they transition from Brain Damage into Eclipse, like I said, the intro in Eclipse is an explosion of sound, and it's climactic after everything that's happened on the album so far. And Roger Waters kind of just summarizes all the different themes that they wrote about in earlier songs in this song. And all that you touch, all that you see, just summarizing all that happens in your life. And what happens eventually, I think, in the second time around, and all that you love and all that you hate, that's when the backing singers come in. And they're singing a D chord while the chords are the bass notes are changing beneath that. So there's this amazing harmony happening. All that you love and all that you hate. And I don't think it stays the same here because that sounds wrong. But anyway, on the first two chords, it sounds amazing. And all that you love and all that you hate. That's different sounding. And so they have three people singing these notes that make up this D chord, the three women, and it's just amazing. And then eventually one of them gets a feature, and I don't know which one of the women that is, but it's just completely epic. And at the end of the song, they have the heartbeat, which is the kick drum, which is the way that the album started. So it's got this cyclical kind of feel to it, which he used later on other albums like Animals and The Wall, using like the same song or same type of pattern in the beginning and the end. So it's just an incredible end to an incredible album, and I give it a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, me too. I think one of the things, like picking up on what you talk about, that because it's basically, Gilmour said basically it's a list song, and that he sings the same thing all the time, that instrumentally they had to sort of throw the kitchen sink at it to make it interesting.
Wow.
He said, that they had to do a lot with the instrumentation and the backing vocals, because the main bit is just, as you say, all that you touch and all it's the same thing over and over, really, until the sort of last line. But yeah, pretty much the same. And Gilmour said, they had to sort of do a lot of things in it to make it interesting, really, which is what you said, and that's that's certainly backed up by Dave Gilmour. Walter said he didn't see it as a riddle. The album uses the sun and moon as symbols, the light and the dark, the good and the bad, the life force opposed to the death force. I think it's a simple statement saying that all good things life can offer are there for us to grasp, but the influence of some dark forces in our nature prevents us from seizing them. So, and he says the song addresses the listener and says that if you, the listener, are affected by that force, and if that force is a worry to you, well, I feel exactly the same way too. So kind of, making a personal connection with the listener there from Roger Waters, which is excellent. So, yeah, I'd give this a 10. I think this is a fantastic ending to the album. I think, as you say, the heartbeat bookends it. So in a sense, you've got the death bit, haven't you? You die, and then the heartbeat goes to, and then it stops, because that's the end. And I think it's the perfect ending to one of the best rock albums ever. We're having an argument for some others, but I think it is right up there for me. So I'm giving this a 20 out of 10. 10 out of 10, interestingly, you listen to it as a piece, don't you? You listen to it as a piece. There's no skipping. There's no kind of, knocking it off between the clocks or whatever. You have to, it makes sense as a piece of a piece. So, yep, I'm giving it a 10. Brad.
Yeah.
Brad.
Well, there's not much more I can say about this other than what you guys already said. So it's like going in this spot in the round of notes. It's like everyone's kind of already said what you want to say, but it completes the continuing concept album vibe. You know, I love the Hammond sound. I love the vocals. It's epic, and a great way to end the album. And you know, it is a concept record. You know, from start to finish, there was a total concept from the very word go, and this just bookends wonderfully the concept record. So I have to give it 10 out of 10, and the whole record's a 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's an album that has its own classification. A little bit different from the albums that we've typically been talking about, but nevertheless does have, you know, some connection. Certainly, it's English. I love the fact that, you know, rock and roll can still, back then in 72, 73, it was still being positive. It was still taking concepts and ideas, and there was the belief that, you know, humanity through understanding each other could progress, you know, that there was a movement forward. And in 2021, you know, we still have to believe that too. I don't know if a lot of music is optimistic as a lot of the music that we rank and rate and talk about, but certainly this album does put you back in an optimistic mood, despite some of the themes, despite talking about, you know, insanity and, you know, the evils of money. It's a great album, and, you know, the song's just about perfect. I'm with Simon. It's a 20 out of 10, 20 out of 20, 50 out of 50. It's hard for me to rate. And one other little thing too, it's interesting how Micheal talked about how the song started with the same heartbeat and ended with the same heartbeat. You know, Dream Theater, who are heavily influenced by Pink Floyd, do that with their albums. So, you know, one album will end on a motif or on a chord, and the next album that they record starts off. So, you know, again, Pink Floyd setting the pattern again, groundbreakers. One more thing too that I picked up when I saw the documentary again, Gilmour wished that he could have been Simon Williams when he was 15 years old, sitting on his parents' parapet listening, because he couldn't do that. He, you know, because he was part of crafting this album. And it's interesting that he mentions that, because a lot of people have obviously said to him over the years, I'll never forget listening to this album through headphones the first time. So obviously he got that email or that letter, Simon, that you sent to him. Actually, it wouldn't have been an email. He would have got that postcard you sent to him. Thank you.
Yes. A handwritten letter.
To the Pink Floyd
embossed
fan club. Look, it's a classic album. Certainly in my top 10 of 1970s albums, it'd have to be. And I look forward to the show when we do that, guys, when we do our top 10 70s albums. That's going to be interesting. Before I pass on to my co-hosts and our guest host, please share our channel. We're at the end of the rankings. I will put Michael's social media links on this show, but you can catch him here. There he is on Instagram at I happen to have. And while you're there, hook up to Brad. There he is there, and Brad will keep you in touch with what we do on this channel. You guys are lucky, because we're going to plan in April a show with Micheal, and we're going to probably do a couple of shows on 24 nights with Micheal. So Michael's going to come back in April with us.
24 nights. 24 nights. Let's go.
Yeah, yeah. So this is how we met Michael, actually, because Michael did a wonderful interview with a guy who was involved in the production of this epic recording and DVD. So we're going to talk about that. This is a heavily influential album for Brad and I as well. I don't know about Simon, but Simon can talk for himself if it is. But yeah, we look forward to doing that show. We're going to probably spread that over maybe 2 or 3 shows, because there's a lot of songs on here. So if you keep in touch with Brad and Michael, you'll get the heads up when we actually plan that.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget, Brad, because you've got the next album. So before we go, don't forget to introduce that album. But I just want to say, Michael, thank you for spending 2.5 hours with us. It's been a pleasure.
Michael, thank you.
Sorry, I didn't remember everything for some reason. I guess I was
no, it's fine.
Nervous for a few minutes, but
well, it's 2:30 in the morning where Michael is. So if anybody is going to be harsh in the comments and they've got to this far, and don't have a crack at Michael, please. Whatever you do, have a crack at me.
I'll take it, whatever.
That guy,
Hey.
or that guy.
Hollywood Squares.
But and put your ranks in the track in the comments too. If you've watched the replay, let us know. We always come back to the comments. We do have. There's a couple of cats that don't watch our shows live that do, and offer some good comments. Derek Craxon is I probably got his name wrong. But yeah, as one person that goes through and gives some in-depth analysis to what we talk about.
Yeah.
I'm going to pass it on to Brad and Simon to offer their final words on the show. But thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Yeah, Michael, thank you. The musical stuff is great and really gives a proper colour to it in a way that us just talking doesn't, which is it's fantastic. And that insight into the construction of them was really cool, really cool. So I really enjoyed that, and a few mistakes I didn't notice. So yeah, as I've said earlier, this album is part of my DNA. Really, it's part of my rock DNA, and it's one of my top 5 albums ever. I listen to it still on a regular basis. Getting on for 50 years later. Yes, 48 years later, having got it when it came out. For me, it's one of the greatest records ever made. It has a themes, it has an intelligence, it has a seriousness to it, it has emotion to it that I think different in lots of other albums, but never beaten. And the whole concept, the sleeve, without the name of the band on it, just that iconic prism on it, just really, 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 classic. And
people see that. People see that shirt, or if someone's wearing that shirt, and you say, "What is that?" and you need to find out about it.
Mr. Cook is wearing the shirt. Well done, Brad.
And we have to mention, it's cool to like this album. Like you have to know.
You're right.
Album.
It's never gone out of fashion, has it?
You have to know the album.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is interesting as well. Is that it's never gone out of fashion.
No.
And if you put it on now, it still sounds. It doesn't. It sounds timeless. In that that in a way it doesn't sound like it was recorded in 1971. 72. But it doesn't. It just sounds timeless, and it could have been recorded at any time. And you can introduce, which is why I think it's still, it still continues to sell, still continues to have an impact on people's lives and things.
They captured it with the feeling that they wanted to.
Yeah.
And that's why it's timeless. And they captured it so well, thanks to Alan Parsons and Abbey Road. And
sure, yes. The whole as ever with these things, it's a whole team effort, isn't it? Not a single person. The band, the backing singers, Alan Parsons, the recording
yeah.
of it, as you mentioned, yeah. So I'm, giving it a 40 out of 10.
Brad.
Yeah, well, thanks, Michael, for joining us and giving us the opportunity to go through this album in depth. Great insight from yourself, and make sure you follow Michael on Instagram. I know I'm going to go make sure I have followed him. I'm not sure if I have or not, but I will, Michael, that's for sure. And I want everyone that's watching this now or later to please subscribe. Please subscribe. It's really important for the channel.
YouTube, Facebook, British Electric Blues Show.
That's it. Get across there, subscribe. We want to grow the channel. We've got a goal. We're trying to get to 500 by the end of this month. We're not far off, but we need your help. So share the hell out of this episode. Share the hell out of the channel and help us get there. And there is an incentive. If you're a Van Halen fan, which most of us all are here, let's be honest, if you're a guitar head, you love Van Halen. Yeah. So there's the winner, or we will be drawing a winner that'll get the choice. T-shirt of their choice.
When's the draw?
It'll be in a few weeks' time. We'll be going live to do it. I'm not sure the exact date. Andrew will get us, and my Instagram, Andrew's and Kurt's will be, everyone actually will be announcing when that draw will happen. So please get across and follow and subscribe and follow everyone's Instagram here as well. We're trying to grow the awareness of the channel. And, thanks very much for the opportunity to go through this record again. I mean, I've distanced myself from this record for a long time because I got sick of it. Not when I say sick of it in a good way, I over-listened to it too much. It was great to drive around listening to this record again. As we do, we listen to these things and these are just our opinions. And we want you guys to rank as well. So make sure you rank in the comments because we want to see what you guys have to say, and we do discuss it, guys. And we've got some things planned where we're going to bring up comments and that. So we want you guys to comment, please. Okay, and thanks to the three gentlemen here for sharing their thoughts on the magical, epic Dark Side of the Moon.
What's our homework for the week for next Sunday?
Okay. What's next?
Okay, so hold on before you do that. So don't forget, on Saturday, Australia New Zealand time, we're doing the 5150 show with Kurt, and we're going to be doing Women and Children first, and then on Sunday we'll be back, Simon, myself, and Brad, to do
461 Ocean Boulevard.
Hey!
This is where I came in. 461 Ocean Boulevard.
Excellent.
Who's
I
that?
can't believe we haven't actually done it. That's why I can't.
No.
Keep missing all these magical albums. I mean, this record in particular is kind of like my introduction to Clapton outside of Cream, really. I think, going backwards from 24 Nights was, that era where I really got into Clapton. And then really the first record I got outside of 24 Nights was 461 Ocean Boulevard. So I want to touch on that one, guys. So that's your homework. And
good.
I think the CD version's got one extra song. There's 11 tracks on.
Yeah. Okay.
I
All
want
right.
to touch on that.
Yeah, do that version.
Cool.
And stay tuned because we're going to have Michael back in April to do 24 Nights. So we're lucky. And Michael, well, Michael hasn't agreed, has he? Have we just...
I'm busy for 24 nights. So.
Oh, we'll have to hijack you then.
See, he's doing it, Michael. See, he's
Happily.
start to imprison you.
But that will be a epic show. We'll have to put some planning into that because it'll be a couple of shows, guys. So the four of us will communicate and talk about that. Simon, if you want to say goodbye to everybody in the ship, but I just want to do one special shout out to Warren. Thank you, Warren, for supporting the channel with PayPal, and also get well, brother. And this man over here. If you message me, I'll give you his address. I've got his address. I know where he lives.
Unless
So
you
you
send
can
money,
send a
Brad. Send
So
money.
you can send a posse.
Get your guitar back. Oh,
All right.
man.
Beautiful
okay,
guitar,
so-
Warren. I love it, Warren.
Yeah, so we could say thanks to DR Guitars. Dave, nice to see you, Dave. Mate. And thanks for all your contributions. Really, really cool. Deja Voodoo, as ever. Warren, get well soon, man. Thinking of you. Aaron Lally, thanks, Aaron, for joining. And Amy. And Nelson, of course. Nelson, there from the beginning. Nelson, look after yourself this week, Nelson. Ken Cook as well. Thanks, Ken, for joining. And Johnny Heartbreaker as well. Johnny Heartbreaker. Who I think is the same. I got everybody. Oh, Kubrick Lover as well. And Arvin as well. Thanks, guys. Good to see you. Hope you enjoyed the show. And yeah, I think that's about it. I haven't seen anybody else. So hopefully I haven't missed anybody. If I have, apologies. Oh, and Ellen Forrestine as well. So thanks, Ellen, for joining. Yes, thank you, everyone. And stay safe this week. Light is only just around the corner, apparently. We'll see you next week. Bye, guys. Take care.